Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Davis and you're watching Fight News Now Extra. Some hot headlines going into the weekend as Dan Henderson reveals his next fight. A super show is set for New Year's Eve in Japan, and Ronda Rousey is making history. In just a few moments, our MMA panel will join to break it all down. Let's get started. UFC officials haven't announced it yet, but Dan Henderson said it's a go. He's set to face fellow light heavyweight Machida on Super Bowl weekend at UFC 156. This bout will likely be on the main card, featuring a featherweight title fight between Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar. You know what has been officially announced? A mega New Year's Eve MMA special. Glory 4 will merge with Dream 18 in Saitama, Japan to give the fans one of the most spectacular shows ever. It will be an 8-hour event featuring a 16-man heavyweight tournament and some of Japan's best MMA fighters. And when Strikeforce canceled 2 shows in 2 months, we all started to wonder if they were going to fold, and reports are saying it's true. The promotion is expected to have their last event in January, and one of their biggest stars, Ronda Rousey, has already signed with the UFC. So it turns out we will see some female fights in the UFC next year. That's the latest combat news going into the weekend, and now it's over to our MMA panel. And guys, Dana White said women would never be fighting in the UFC, but look what's happened. Ronda Rousey.
What an about face for Dana White here. And Strikeforce, this is obviously going to be one of the biggest news items of the year and going into 2013 with the final show set for January 12th.
Yeah, it's very disappointing for the Strikeforce organization as well as any fans who followed the promotion, but it was inevitable. Showtime and Zuffa just couldn't get along. They couldn't figure things out, and it is unfortunate for the mixed martial arts landscape. But for MMA fans, that January card is going to be loaded, and it's really going to show fans what they're going to miss.
And I think, Robin, there's winners and losers to all of this. There's certain fighters here that they are now going to get to leap onto the UFC platform and make more money than they ever have. But if you think those 80 fighters are all going to be absorbed, you're kidding yourself.
No, you're right. There are winners and losers. And usually the winner looks to be the mothership, the UFC. In any of these exchanges, the UFC generally comes out on top. They do here. They fold the best fighters in there. They take Ronda Rousey, who has become a star. She's like a psychotic little beautiful rabid animal that goes after her opponents. I mean, they're going to build this thing up. And we will see a fantastic card in January at Strikeforce, but it's going to be a shame to say
How do you guys book Ronda Rousey and Cyborg if that's the first fight you go to? Is that something you put on Fox? Is it a pay-per-view fight? What do you do, John?
No, I definitely don't even make that fight. Cyborg says that she will not be able to fight at 135 pounds. Ronda Rousey says that she wants to fight at 135 pounds. I think you can use both Cyborg and Ronda Rousey to elevate the level of for women's mixed martial arts. There's a lot of challengers for Ronda Rousey. Sarah McCann is one of them. Miesha Tate is one of them, as well as Sarah Kaufman or Marlos Kunin. These are fights that can be sold. Save Cyborg for fighters in her own weight class.
Humbug. That's nuts. You take the hot chick and you make her fight the muscular, scary-looking chick. That's what
and then
you
what
gotta
happens?
do.
So then what do you do after that?
They don't think about after that. When's the last time?
That's the problem.
But when you can go out and buy the next thing and find the next person and create the next star, they think in the short term. It's a very, modern way to think. Maybe it's not the right thing, but it's what they've been doing.
The 2 fight on Fox in April, get a big audience. Coming out of it, you can put Ronda Rousey on The Ultimate Fighter, introduce all these new women, and then if the first fight was big enough, you can go back to pay-per-view for a rematch. John Pollock available for booking. Help.
The problem is, I talk to a lot of casual fans, and the reality is, most of these guys do not want to see women fight.
Come on, that's ridiculous. We've proven on Showtime here that there is an audience.
We're talking about Showtime. That's right. They had a built-in mixed martial arts audience. We're talking about a casual fan base, and that's what's going to be introduced. When Ronda Rousey bursts onto the UFC scene, a lot of people are going to be exposed to women's mixed martial arts for the very first time.
When you really look at it, there's a million sports we can compare. Everybody likes the NBA. not that many people spend a lot of time watching the WNBA.
We're not talking about women's mixed martial arts as a whole. We're talking about a star in Ronda Rousey that people gravitate to. And if you think her going on Fox is not going to draw, I would severely doubt it. I think it would be the second most watched Fox fight, right behind JDS.
Definitely, she is a star. But you can make her on The Ultimate Fighter, and I don't know that anybody's going to be all that interested in some fighter from Ottawa who's 3-2 who comes down and fights. She's a star, no question. Make her fight the muscular chick. We all want to see that.
You want to chat about Dan Henderson and Machida? It looks pegged for that Super Bowl weekend card, which is shaping up to be a very loaded show with the featherweight title fight on there. Rashad Evans is going to be fighting Antonio Rogerio Nogueira. Henderson and Lyoto, this should create the next challenger for that Jones-Sonnen winner.
Well, first off, it should have been Dan Henderson taking on John Jones. That's the fight that I think most hardcore mixed martial arts fans wanted to see. They wanted to see a new challenge for John Jones, a credible challenge for John Jones. Dan Henderson coming off some huge victories, including that knockout victory over Fedor Emelianenko. That puts him in that spot. Instead, we have a great follow-up fight, Lyoto Machida and Dan Henderson. Machida, many people say that he is the only guy to win a round against John Jones. I think this should create the definitive #1 contender.
Yeah, and I think this is a problem for Dan Henderson. I mean, Dan Henderson is one of the great fighters ever, and he has huge knockout power. He's got great wrestling. He's one of the greats ever. But one of the toughest matchups for him is Lyoto Machida, because you can't get your hand on him. And if he sees you throwing something,
which you will.
He will see that right hand come. He'll dance out. He'll come in. He'll hurt him. It's not a great fight for Dan Henderson. I think Henderson could beat Jones. I don't think Machida can beat Jones, but I think Machida can beat Henderson.
And 8 hours of Glory 4 Dream 18, which come together to form Gleam 22 is what we're going to call it.
Yeah, I absolutely love the fact that Glory and Dream are teaming up. 8-hour broadcast. Come on, get it together. Nobody is going to spend the time watching this broadcast, no matter how good the fights are.
I will.
Except for me and Robin, of course. It's going to be exciting, but come on, 8 hours?
8 hours, Sarah Davis. Happy New Year.
Yay! Ringing in 2013 with 8 hours of MMA in Japan. Well, all right, some of us will be watching that, so thanks, guys. This time next week, we will be practically foaming at the mouth in anticipation for George St. Pierre versus Carlos Condit. And before that fight happens, we'll be bringing you the live pre-fight press conference, live weigh-ins, and latest interviews from Montreal ahead of UFC 154. So don't forget to join us after the card as well, when we'll be live in studio breaking down all the fights. Now coming up next, we have some more Fight News Now Extra.